What's going on, everyone? This is Jerry here at CaptureCraft, and today we're talking about changing things up, changing our perspectives, changing the way we view reality. We're talking about focal lengths today, starting off specifically with the wide ones. Let's jump right into it. So, what are our wide focal lengths? Or what is a focal length specifically, right? You know what they are. You know exactly what they are. It's the numbers on the lens here. It says 24 to 70. That is your focal length. And the smaller the number, the wider the field of view. So my widest lens is, I don't think I have it out here, but we'll talk about it anyhow. It's 18 millimeters, a little novelty cap lens, and it's super wide and it's super distorted. That's one of the drawbacks of getting really wide. Yeah, is that the lens will start. But we'll get into that here in a second. Think wide focal lengths for landscape, group shots, things like that. Things where you need to cover a lot of area left and right, laterally maybe, and things way out in the distance aren't that important. Or the things out in the distance are vast, mountain ranges, city landscapes, things like that. Then your wide comes in. With your long reaches, your long focal lengths, my longest focal length is this one here, so 150. And yeah, it just does the same thing. Instead of being wide, it didn't zoom. Well, I guess it zooms if you're using a zoom lens, but the focal length gets out further. So it reaches deeper, deeper, deeper into the subject and places your subject matter just right up in your face. So both have their pros and cons, but today we're gonna focus on the wide ones. One of the ways that I learned and made it fun and made it cool was practice, repetition, getting a routine, things like that, right? So we're sticking with our bite-sized learning. We're sticking with our plan of breaking photography down into small chunks. So we've learned how to expose, aperture, shutter speed, ISO. We've learned how to compose, right? We started just with the rule of thirds. Like I said, there's many, many, many different theories on composition. However, the rule of third is probably the most widely used and the most well-known. So now we're gonna talk about the glass. We're gonna put it all on the glass, right? Your first lens you probably got with your new camera was something along the lines of a 28 to 70 or 24 to 70 or 28 to 75 or somewhere in that mid focal range. I know Sony likes to do a package where you get a 50 prime, the nifty 50 is what they call it, and the 28 to I think 75 or something along those lines. And that's just a medium focal length lens that happens to be wide at one end. So we kind of spoke on the benefits of a wide lens, right? Landscape, architecture, things of that nature. And we talked about why we're gonna start at first. It's because we're gonna use the wide lens with some architecture and landscape to go into our routine, right? So we're taking our wide lens and we're getting out and we're mucking around. It's raining here where I'm at right now real hard. So we're mucking around in the wet. We got our rain suit on and we got our lens covered up and we want to catch the clouds as they break over the big landscape here in St. Louis, the St. Louis Arch. And we're waiting for that moment. And let's say the clouds break and the sun's just setting in the back and we can see a beautiful scene and we want to capture it in its entirety. Well, the cool thing is, even though the scene's going to be changing with the clouds and everything, the arch itself isn't going to move. So that's how the wide lens, or why I wanted to talk about the wide lens first. So it goes into our routine. We got a lens that we can put on a tripod or have in our hand, or however we want to capture the scene. We can start working that into our routine. So we're gonna take our time. The thing's not gonna move. That's why it's great to start with this. The thing's not gonna move. We're gonna take our time. We're gonna dial in our exposure. We're gonna use some creative techniques when it comes to composure. And we're gonna talk about a couple more here. And then we're gonna use our wide lens and take a bunch of shots in a bunch of different ways and a bunch of different angles and practice our craft. Get good with our tool. That's what I did. Am I better? A little. Am I the best I'll ever be? Nowhere near that. One of the first things I used to love to take photos of doorways. I think doorways are super cool. Blast from the past, just seeing an artisan from way back then, a mason who's stacking those stones, and a carpenter who's, you know, building a wooden door, hanging in this cool place, and it's got all this cool texture and history to it. I love seeing a cool door. And that's what I started on. They weren't going anywhere. They look cool in a photo. I could practice around it with a few different things and not be pressed for time or not feel anxious that my model's getting, you know, nervous and wants to move on or wants to do something else. You know, it gives you a good chance to settle in, take a deep breath, play with some settings, look at your results, and dial it in. One of the things that this lens will do, not this lens particularly, but well, maybe this one, if we're down at the wider end, wide lenses tend to have distortion. So a few ways to combat that is we want to always keep our horizon level if we're shooting landscape, right? Talked about the rule of thirds, top line, bottom line, you know, line up that top one with the horizon in the back and make sure that stays nice and level, because the more you lean to one side or the other, the more it will distort. You want to make sure you put your subject matter right in the center of the lens. Let's get this cap off. The center of this lens here, that part right, that little hole there, that's gonna be the sharpest and have the least amount of distortion anywhere else in this lens. Any lens, anything right in the middle is gonna be the sharpest that lens can capture. So when you're shooting wide, if we're shooting landscape, like the main subject you wanna capture, if it's a mountain peak, if you got a mountain range and one's the tall one, get that bad boy or bad girl or bad mountain range right there in the center, and then the rest off to the side. So the viewer's eyes kind of using leading lines to draw you to the focal point or the subject matter. And you have less chance for distortion. Speaking of leading lines, that's gonna be a new concept we're gonna throw out there right now about composition. So we got our wide open shot. We're in our wide open space and we see our wide open things. I think I have a shot coming up. It's gonna be a statue, a guy on a horse, there's a path leading up to it. And that's what you're doing with the leading lines. You are finding ways to get the viewer's eye to travel along a path, whether it be a tree line or some type of predefined edge that guides the eye to the subject, right? That's gonna minimize the appearance or the perception of distortion, doesn't really get rid of it. But when you have things that are driving your eye to what you wanna look at, you're less inclined to see all the extra stuff going on. All right, so we've taken photos of my favorite, a door. We've done some landscapes. Now you're trekking around, maybe, let's say we're still out there moving around, getting ready to shoot something, and we got a friend with us. And the friend's like, hey, take my picture, I look nice. And I say, okay, friend, I'm gonna take your picture because you look nice. And I get this wide lens real up close to them. That is gonna make their face look strange. What do I mean? A wide lens distorts or stretches an image, and you can do some cool things with it if you wanna be really artistic. However, most people like to look beautiful. And if you get a lens, you know, close to their nose or chin or ear, it's gonna exaggerate the size of whatever's close and make everything else look disproportionate. So artistically, is it the wrong move? That's up to you to decide. However, play around with it. Know that when you get real close to something with a wide lens, that thing that's close is gonna seem disproportionately sized to the things in the background. One example that we've probably seen before, didn't even pay attention to, is the fish. Somebody's going fishing and they hold the fish out in front of them, and you're like, man, I caught a fish this big, and the fish may only be that big, but since it's closer to the camera, it looks like it's a huge, I don't know, great white shark compared to the little bluegill that it probably is, and the person could be holding it here and show you that the fish is actually that big. So wide lenses will distort images in more than one way. It's gonna add some bows, it's gonna add some curvature to big images like landscapes and buildings and everything. So, you want to make sure you have your image centered or your subject centered when you're shooting landscape. And when you're shooting portraiture, you may want to use this lens if you want a more traditional looking shot. From the waist up would be a good distance, a little bit of distance away from the subject, as opposed to just being all up in their grill and having this thing, make their nose look like a toucan or their ears look super big or something like that. So with this lens being so wide, it lets you do a lot of things that you wouldn't be able to necessarily do with a longer lens. Longer meaning longer focal length. Since this has more width or more height, depending if you're shooting portrait or landscape, you want to fill that frame with interesting things, right? So instead of just looking at the things just right in front of you, kind of parallel away from the camera, you start looking for tiers of things. You want to layer some foreground, your subject in maybe the center, and then some background. So not only do you have your shot composed the way that you want it, your subject matter may be in the center, but you have a little bit of foreground, some bushes, some things, whatever, something to give a little bit of foreground interest, your subject, and then the back, which will become the backdrop for your picture, right? So using those techniques will help from having a picture that's just a big old wide open space of nothing interesting. Now, some shots like that are super cool. I've seen some really beautiful, artful shots made of just a person in front of like just big old white seamless backdrop or in just a vast open room, and that's cool. Like if you're showing the enormity of like a room or a monument or something, that's the only thing there, sometimes that's cool to have just one small little tiny person inside of a big thing. But we're not always in that situation. We're not always going to be in the really cool big thing to show off how wide an area is. So if you're shooting with a wider lens, add a little texture, foreground, subject, background, make it interesting, right? Right. Okay, so here's another fun thing that we can do with this lens. So since it does distort, if you're shooting from a low angle, like we're getting down and we're shooting up towards a person, this wide lens will exaggerate things. If you're shooting up on someone, that's gonna make them look like the hero or the big tough person that's in the shot, and it's gonna exaggerate their stature. They're gonna be bigger and larger than life. That's a good way to, someone is a champion, just won a ball game or just won anything or did something cool and they wanna look heroic. A shot from a little bit of a lower angle will make them look super statuesque and super, big, larger than life, right? So the opposite, you get up on a chair and you're shooting down on someone, it's gonna make them look small, diminutive, less than, it's gonna take away. So from a story perspective, if we wanted to make someone look like a hero, we shoot lower. If someone in the story has been like the victim and we want to get our viewer to be empathetic or, maybe have a sad look at, look down, for lack of words, on this person at a downward angle, it's gonna make that person look less than. They're looking up into the camera. They got those big puppy dog eyes. They just look maybe defeated or less than. So that's that. The most natural, it's gonna be straight on, it's gonna be conversational, you're on even playing field with someone, they're your peers, they're your friends, easy to talk to, right? So those are some of the ideas that you can incorporate with the wide lens. All right, so we've taken all our shots, we've done all our things, we got the stuff going on, and you're saying, Jerry, I am taking these photos of some real estate or for a client, and they don't want wonky lines in their photos, and I don't know how to get around that. Well, with the advent of digital cameras, the way you get around that is post-production processing, right? You bring your images into whatever photo processor you choose, and you can click to remove the lens distortion. I know Lightroom is what I use, and it has a profile for the lens that I'm using. If it doesn't right away, when I plug the camera in, it'll go get it and download it, then it'll have it. But it'll say remove lens distortion. You click that and you'll see the lens go from a bubbled out to like a popped in nice and flat and square image. And that'll take the distortion out of it. Is it cheating? No. It's a thing. You know, I don't think you could have done that in a way with film. It probably may have been a way. I'm not keen to it. And if you know, I would definitely like to know, because this right here is my 24-70 for my film camera, and I love to shoot with it. You know, sometimes things get a little wonky. I get like a curvy tree or a light post or something, but it doesn't bother me so much because my film camera, the stuff that I shoot for that, I just shoot for me. That's what I shoot hobby with. Usually if I'm shooting with a digital, I'm shooting for a client or for a specific project. And yeah, like I'm okay with having something that's a little bit curved, because I mean, if that's the way the thing does, that's the way the thing does. You know, I mean, I'm not going to fight a lens because it has a little bit of a distortion with a wider angle, because I know a few tips and tricks to try to minimize the subject and being distorted, right? We just talked about it. So we put all of those things into practice, and we got ourselves something good. We're learning stuff. We're practicing. We got our routine. We've exposed. We've composed. And now we're getting wide in the all outside with this wide focal length. And yeah, we're gonna take it to the next thing and talk about telephotos in the next one. There it is. That is my brief introduction of what focal lengths are. They're the magical numbers that help you tell a story, right? We talked about the wide ones. And if you want to shoot wide, why not just get outside? I promise I won't say cheesy things all the time, but I probably will say cheesy things most of the time, because I'm a big cheese ball, I'm sorry. But you get your wide lens, and you get out there and shoot, and it's gonna be another thing in our new learning routine. We're learning a new tool, we're learning a new skill, and shooting wide with everything that we've learned up until this point is great practice. If you stuck around this long, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. You're the best part of this whole entire thing. Even if it's only like 6 people that watch it, I appreciate all 6 of you. And yeah, if you got a question, comment, concern, you want me to cover something that's maybe coming up later, sooner, just let me know. Put it in the comments, drop me a DM, all of that fast jazz, and I'll get to it. Again, my name is Jerry, and this is Capture Craft, and I'll talk to you very soon.